5 years ago, Alpha King Dominic Pierce threw his fated mate into the snow because a doctor claimed she was barren. He didn't just reject her, he tried to erase her existence. But tonight, the king is hosting a grand fertility ball to parade his pregnant mistress and humiliate his ex-mate one last time. He sent Tessa an invitation as a sick joke, expecting her to hide in shame. Instead, she is walking through the ballroom doors wearing the color of revenge. And she isn't alone. She brought 4 identical young alphas with eyes exactly like his. The king wanted a show. He is about to get a war. The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the roof of the small, unassuming cottage tucked away near the edge of the Olympic Peninsula. It was a humble home, indistinguishable from the thousands of other rentals in the Pacific Northwest. But for Tessa Hart, it was a fortress. It was safety. Inside, the smell of burnt toast and wet dog hung in the air, the chaotic, comforting scent of a real family. Tessa stood by the kitchen island, her hands gripping the edge of the granite counter until her knuckles turned white. In front of her sat a heavy, cream-colored envelope. It wasn't paper, it was vellum, embossed with gold leaf. The seal was a wolf's head roaring in profile, stamped in black wax, the royal seal of the Obsidian Shadow Pack. "Mum, you okay?" The voice was deep for a 5-year-old, carrying a gravelly undertone that shouldn't belong to a child. Tessa looked up. Standing in the doorway was Liam. He was one of 4, but he was the protector. Even at 5, he stood with his shoulders squared, his messy dark hair falling over eyes that were a startling, icy blue. Dominic's eyes. "I'm fine, baby," Tessa lied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She quickly swept the envelope under a stack of mail. "Just a bill. Go check on your brothers. If Caleb tries to climb the refrigerator again, you have permission to use your alpha voice." Liam narrowed his eyes. He was too smart for his own good, but he nodded and turned back toward the living room, where the sounds of wrestling and a crashing lamp echoed. Tessa let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She pulled the envelope back out. She had already read it, but the words were burned into her retinas. To Miss Tessa Hart, His Majesty, Alpha King Dominic Pierce, and his future queen, Lady Bianca Sterling, cordially invite you to the Grand Fertility Ball. We celebrate the impending arrival of the royal heir. Your presence is requested to witness the future of the kingdom. Dress code, submissions white. It was a taunt, a sick, twisted joke. 5 years ago, Dominic hadn't just rejected her, he had destroyed her. Tessa remembered the sterility of the Pack Hospital, the cold metal of the exam table, and the look of utter disgust on Dominic's face when Dr. Ares, the royal physician, had handed him the chart. "Barren," Dominic had spat, the word hitting her harder than a physical blow. "A king cannot have a broken mate. A king needs a legacy. You are nothing to me." He hadn't let her speak. He hadn't let her beg for a second opinion. He had publicly severed their bond in front of the Pack Council, stripping her of her title and her dignity. Lady Bianca, the daughter of his beta, had been standing right there, smirking, her hand resting possessively on Dominic's arm. Tessa had left that night with nothing but the clothes on her back. She had run until her paws bled, shifting back to human form only when she reached the city limits of Seattle, collapsing in an alleyway. She hadn't known then that Dr. Ares was lying. She hadn't known that 2 weeks later she would wake up vomiting, not from grief, but from morning sickness. She hadn't known she was carrying not 1, but 4 royal pups. Quadruplets, a phenomenon so rare it hadn't been seen in werewolf history for 3 centuries. Tessa looked at the invitation again. Submission white. He wanted her to come dressed in the color of a surrendered wolf. He wanted to parade his pregnant mistress in front of her to prove that he had won, that he had replaced the broken toy with a working one. "He thinks I'm still that scared 20-year-old girl," Tessa whispered to the empty kitchen. The floorboards creaked. She turned to see not just Liam, but all four of them standing there. Liam, the leader. Noah, the strategist, holding a broken toy truck. Ethan, the brawler, nursing a small bruise on his cheek. And Caleb, the wild card, grinning with a missing front tooth. They were 5 years old, but they were already as big as human 8-year-olds. Their aura was undeniable. Even suppressed with the herbs she put in their food, their power hummed in the air like static electricity. They were alphas, all four of them. "Who made you mad, Mum?" Noah asked quietly, his eyes scanning the envelope on the counter. "Is it the bad man?" Tessa froze. She had never told them about Dominic. She had only told them their father was dead. But wolf children had instincts that defied logic. "No one," Tessa said, her voice trembling. "You smell like lightning," Ethan said, stepping forward. "You smell like you want to fight." Tessa looked at her sons. For 5 years she had hidden them. She had worked 3 jobs, waitressing, cleaning, and freelance translating, to keep them fed and safe. She had denied them their heritage to protect them from a man who would likely see them as a threat to his control, or worse, tools to be used. But Dominic had invited her. He had dared to poke the bear. If she didn't go, he would send trackers. He would hunt her down just to mock her in person. He wouldn't stop until he got his reaction. A cold, hard resolve settled in Tessa's chest. The fear evaporated, replaced by a burning, ancient anger. "Boys," Tessa said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its maternal softness and gaining the steel of a Luna. "How would you like to go to a party?" Caleb's eyes widened. "A party? With cake?" "Yes," Tessa said, a dangerous smile curving her lips. "With cake. And I think it's time we bought you some new suits. Black ones." She looked back at the invitation. "Submission." "White?" "No." She would wear red, the color of blood, the color of revenge. The Obsidian Shadow Pack House was more of a castle than a house. Nestled deep in the mountains of Washington, it was a sprawling estate of stone and glass, lit up tonight like a beacon against the dark forest. Luxury cars lined the long driveway, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, custom SUVs. The elite of the werewolf world had gathered. Inside the grand ballroom, the atmosphere was suffocatingly opulent. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasted venison, and the underlying musk of hundreds of wolves posturing for status. King Dominic Pierce stood on the raised dais at the front of the room. At 32, he was in his prime. He was tall, with broad shoulders that strained against his tuxedo, and a jawline that looked carved from granite. But his eyes were hard. Beside him sat Bianca Sterling. She was glowing, quite literally, her skin flushed with health. She wore a tight-fitting gold gown that accentuated the swell of her stomach. She was 6 months pregnant. "Are you sure she's coming?" Bianca whispered, leaning into Dominic. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes darted nervously toward the massive oak doors. Dominic swirled the whiskey in his glass. "She'll come. Tessa never could resist an order from her alpha, even a rejected one." "I just want this over with," Bianca pouted. "I want everyone to see that I am the true queen. Once they see her, barren, sad, pathetic Tessa, they'll stop whispering about the true mate bond." "They will," Dominic assured her, though a flicker of unease tightened his gut. He had expected Tessa to reply with a begging letter, or to not reply at all. Instead, her RSVP had arrived yesterday with a single word checked: attending. Suddenly, the chatter in the ballroom died down. It didn't taper off. It was cut, as if someone had sliced the sound cord. The heavy oak doors at the back of the room groaned open. Usually, the herald would announce the guest, but the herald stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. The sound of heels clicking on the marble floor echoed through the silence. Click, click, click. Tessa Hart walked in. She was not wearing white. She was wearing a gown of deep, crimson velvet that hugged every curve of her body, a body that was not frail or broken, but lush and powerful. The dress had a slit that went up to her thigh, revealing toned legs, and the neckline plunged daringly low. Her hair, once kept in a messy bun, cascaded down her back in dark, glossy waves. Her makeup was sharp, her lips painted a blood red that matched her dress. She looked like a goddess of war. But it wasn't just her appearance that silenced the room. It was the aura. It rolled off her in waves, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't the aura of a rejected rogue. This was the aura of a Luna. And she wasn't alone. Walking behind her, in a perfect V formation, were 4 small figures. To her left, 2 boys in impeccably tailored black tuxedos. To her right, 2 more. They walked with a synchronization that was eerie for children. They didn't look at the crowd. They looked straight ahead, their expressions bored, almost arrogant. Gasps rippled through the room. Who are they? Look at their faces. Is that possible? Dominic felt the glass in his hand shatter. The whiskey soaked his hand, but he didn't feel it. He couldn't breathe. He stared at the boy closest to Tessa, Liam. The boy looked up, scanning the room until his eyes locked on to Dominic's. It was like looking in a mirror. The same sharp nose, the same dark hair, and those eyes. Those distinctive icy blue eyes that belonged to the Pierce bloodline, and only the Pierce bloodline. Bianca stood up, her face draining of colour. She gripped the armrest of her throne so hard her nails dug into the velvet. "Dominic," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Dominic, tell me that isn't what I think it is." Tessa stopped in the centre of the room, exactly 10 feet from the dais. She didn't bow. She didn't curtsy. She simply placed a hand on her hip and looked up at the man who had ruined her life. "Happy fertility ball, Dominic," Tessa said. Her voice was clear, ringing like a bell through the silent hall. "You invited me to witness the future of the kingdom, so I thought I'd bring the past you forgot about." She gestured to the 4 boys flanking her. "Introduce yourselves, boys," she commanded softly. Liam stepped forward, his chin lifted high. "I am Liam." Noah stepped forward. "I am Noah." Ethan crossed his arms. "I am Ethan." Caleb grinned, showing the gap in his teeth. "And I'm Caleb." They spoke in unison, their voices projecting with a hint of an alpha command that made the wolves in the front row flinch. "And we," Liam finished, staring daggers at the king, "are the sons of Tessa Hart." The room erupted. "Get them out!" Bianca shrieked, her composure shattering. She pointed a shaking finger at Tessa. "She's lying. She's a Barren stray. Those bastards could belong to anyone." Dominic stepped down from the dais. The crowd parted for him, like the Red Sea. He walked slowly, his eyes never leaving the 4 boys. He felt a pull in his chest, a magnetic snap that he hadn't felt in 5 years. The bond. Not the mate bond. He had severed that. But the blood bond. It was screaming at him. He stopped in front of Tessa. He towered over her, his shadow falling across her face. He could smell her. Vanilla and rain, the scent that had haunted his dreams for half a decade. But underneath that, he smelled them. The pups. They smelled like him. "You were barren," Dominic said, his voice a low growl that vibrated in the floorboards. "Dr. Orris showed me the charts. Your womb was dead." Tessa laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "And you believed him? You believed a piece of paper over your own mate? Tell me the truth," Dominic demanded, his control slipping. His alpha wolf was clawing at the surface, desperate to claim the 4 powerful presences standing by her legs. "Are they mine?" Tessa's smile vanished. She leaned in close, so only he and Bianca could hear. "Yours?" she whispered. "No, Dominic. You rejected me. You rejected us. These are my sons. You just happened to be the sperm donor." She turned to the crowd, raising her voice again. "But don't worry, everyone. I didn't come to crash the party. I just came to return the RSVP." She reached into a clutch and pulled out the crumpled invitation, dropping it at Dominic's feet. "I think you'll find your heir situation is a bit more complicated than you thought." Dominic looked down at the boys. 4 of them. 4 male heirs. In a world where alpha heirs were rare, and female wolves often struggled to carry even one to term, this was a miracle. It was a dynasty in the flesh, and he had thrown them out into the snow. "Guards!" Bianca screamed, seeing the look in the pack members' eyes, a look of awe directed at Tessa. Not her. "Arrest her! She's trespassing! She's a rogue!" 3 large security wolves moved forward, hesitating. "Don't touch my mother," Liam said. It wasn't a request. The 5-year-old boy stomped his foot, and a wave of pure, raw alpha pressure blasted outward. Boom! The crystal glasses on the nearby tables shattered. The 3 security guards were forced to their knees, whining as the sheer weight of the command hit them. Silence fell again, absolute and terrified. A 5-year-old had just brought grown warriors to their knees. Dominic stared at Liam in horror and wonder. That wasn't just an alpha. That was a king-tier wolf. Tessa placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, calming him instantly. She looked back at Dominic, her eyes blazing with triumph. "You wanted to mock a barren wolf, Dominic?" she asked. "Well, here I am. Mock me now." The silence in the ballroom was shattered by Dominic's roar. "Clear the room! Everyone out! Now!" The guests scrambled, tripping over their expensive gowns and dropping champagne flutes in their haste to escape the radiating fury of the Alpha King. Within 60 seconds, the grand ballroom was empty, save for Dominic, Bianca, Tessa, the quadruplets, and the pack council members who stood by the walls, watching with wide, terrified eyes. "Gordon!" Dominic barked at his head of security, a scarred bear of a man. "Lock the doors. No one leaves until I know the truth." "The truth?" Bianca shrieked. Her perfectly curated facade was melting like wax near a flame. She marched up to Dominic, grabbing his lapels. "The truth is that she is a whore. She slept with some rogue, probably dyed their hair, and brought them here to humiliate me on my night. Kick her out, Dominic, for the sake of our son." She placed a hand on her pregnant belly, using it as a shield. Dominic looked at her hand, then back at the 4 boys, standing like statues behind Tessa. He looked at Liam's eyes. He looked at Noah's brooding expression. He looked at the way Ethan cracked his knuckles, a nervous tic Dominic himself had. "We do a DNA test," Dominic said, his voice deadly calm. "Right now." "I'm not subjecting my children to your needles," Tessa said coldly, crossing her arms. "You don't have a choice, Tessa." Dominic stepped closer. "If they are of royal blood, they are property of the crown." Tessa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Property? Is that all they are to you? Spare parts? You threw away the factory." She gestured to herself. "But now you want the product?" "I want the truth," Dominic shouted, the windows rattling in their frames. "Fine," Tessa hissed. "But Dr. Orris doesn't touch them. I want an independent doctor, someone who isn't on Bianca's payroll." Bianca flinched. It was subtle, a mere twitch of her left eye, but Dominic saw it. "Dr. Orris is the royal physician," Bianca argued quickly, her voice pitching up. "He is the most trusted—" "Get Dr. Orris," Dominic interrupted, his eyes narrowing at his mistress. "And get Dr. Evans from the city hospital. We'll use both." 30 minutes later, the atmosphere in the king's private study was thick enough to choke on. The boys were sitting on a leather sofa, looking bored. Caleb was kicking his legs, leaving muddy scuff marks on the pristine upholstery. Normally, Dominic would have flayed anyone for disrespecting his office. Today, he couldn't take his eyes off them. Dr. Aris, a thin, weasel-faced man with spectacles, was shaking as he prepared the swabs. Dr. Evans, a stern woman from the city pack, stood watching him like a hawk. "Just a cheek swab," Dr. Evans said gently to Caleb. Caleb opened his mouth wide. "I bit a doctor once," he announced cheerfully. "He tasted like sanitizer." Dominic suppressed a smile. God, that was exactly something his brother, the late Prince Adrian, would have said. The rapid gene sequencing machine sat on the desk, humming. In the werewolf world, paternity tests were instant. The magic in the blood reacted immediately. As the machine whirred, Bianca paced the room, her gold dress swishing violently. She refused to look at the boys. Beep. The machine printed a single sheet of paper. Dr. Evans pulled it out. She looked at it, her eyebrows shooting up into her hairline. She looked at Dominic, then at Tessa. "Well?" Dominic demanded. "Read it." "Probability of paternity," Dr. Evans read, her voice steady. 99.99998%. Sire, Alpha King, Dominic Pierce. Damn, Tessa Hart. She paused. "And there is something else, my king." "What?" "The blood potency levels," Dr. Evans said, handing him the paper. "Normal alpha pups register between 500 and 700 on the scale. Your sons are registering at 1/200. It's off the charts. They aren't just alphas. They are Ultimas," Tessa finished softly. The room went dead silent. An Ultima wolf was a legend, a wolf born with the power to command even other alphas. To have one was a generational miracle. To have 4, it was terrifying. Dominic stared at the paper. His hands shook. He looked at Tessa. He saw the tired lines around her eyes, the cheap fabric of her purse, the scuffed shoes of the boys. She had raised 4 Ultimas alone, on a waitress's salary, while he sat in a castle drinking scotch and mourning a legacy he thought he'd lost. He turned slowly to Dr. Aris. "Aris," Dominic said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was scarier than any shout. "5 years ago, you looked me in the eye and told me her womb was withered. You told me she was incapable of conception." Dr. Aris turned a sickly shade of green. "My king, the equipment, it must have been faulty." "Faulty?" Dominic snarled. He lunged across the desk, grabbing the doctor by the throat and lifting him off the ground. "You stole 5 years of my life. You stole my sons. She made me." Dr. Aris wheezed, clawing at Dominic's hand. He pointed a shaking finger at Bianca. "She promised me a seat on the High Council. She told me to falsify the records. She said Tessa was weak, that she wasn't fit to be queen." Dominic froze. He dropped the doctor, who collapsed coughing on the floor. Dominic turned to Bianca. Bianca was backing away, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of panic. "He's lying!" Bianca screamed. "Dominic, look at me. I'm carrying your son right now. I gave you what she couldn't." "She gave me 4, Dominic said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You gave me lies." "I did it for you," Bianca yelled, abandoning the denial. "She was a nobody, Dominic, a waitress, a human-born wolf with no lineage. You needed a strong queen. My father is your beta. We were a power match. I saved you from a weak bloodline." "Weak?" Dominic looked at Liam, who was currently glaring at the head of security with such intensity that the grown man was avoiding eye contact. "There is nothing weak in this room," Dominic said, "except you." "Guards," Dominic commanded. "Escort Lady Bianca to the East Wing. Confine her there until I decide what to do with her." "You can't do this!" Bianca shrieked as Gordon grabbed her arm. "I am pregnant with the prince. You can't lock me up." "If you weren't pregnant," Dominic said, turning his back on her, I would kill you where you stand. Get her out of my sight." As the door slammed shut, silence returned to the office. Dominic was left alone with the family he had thrown away. He took a step toward Tessa. "Tessa, Don't," Tessa said, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare apologize. An apology doesn't fix 5 years of poverty. It doesn't fix the nights I held them while they cried, because their teeth were coming in, and their alpha instincts were hurting them, and I didn't know how to help. I want to know them," Dominic pleaded. "I want to be their father." "You're not their father," Noah spoke up from the couch. He hadn't looked up from a Rubik's Cube he had found on the desk, which he solved in under 10 seconds. "You're just the donor. Mum says sperm donors are like banks, but with less interest." Dominic flinched. "We are staying tonight," Tessa said firmly, "because it's late and the boys are tired. But tomorrow, we leave." "You can't take the royal heirs," Dominic argued, panic rising in his chest. "Watch me," Tessa challenged, "unless you plan to imprison us. Because if you try to cage 4 Ultimas, Dominic, you won't have a castle left by morning." Dominic looked at the boys. Caleb was now chewing on the corner of a $5,000 mahogany desk. Ethan was arm-wrestling a statue. She was probably right. "I'll have the royal suite prepared," Dominic conceded, defeated. "Please, just stay the night." The royal suite was larger than Tessa's entire house. It had 4 bedrooms, a living area with a fireplace large enough to roast a pig, and a balcony overlooking the moonlit mountains. But for the boys, it was a playground. It was too Anarem. Tessa had finally collapsed into a deep sleep in the master bedroom, the emotional toll of the day draining her completely. She had told the boys to sleep. They, of course, did not listen. "This place is boring," Ethan complained. He was jumping on the king-sized bed in the second bedroom, trying to see if he could touch the chandelier. "It has terrible security," Liam noted. He was standing by the window, looking at the patrol patterns of the guards below. "There's a blind spot by the garden wall. If we wanted to escape, we could be out in 4 minutes." "I want food," Caleb said. "Rich people food. Do they have dinosaur nuggets?" "I'm going exploring," Noah said quietly. He slipped out of the bedroom door. "Mum said stay put," Liam hissed. "Mum is asleep," Noah countered. "And I smell old books." Noah was the quiet one, the thinker. While his brothers solved problems with their fists or their voices, Noah solved them with his mind. He padded barefoot down the massive stone hallway, dodging the night patrols with an instinct that shouldn't belong to a 5-year-old. He followed the scent of paper and ink until he found double doors made of dark oak. He pushed them open. The Royal Library. It was magnificent. 2 stories of books, spiraling staircases, and rolling ladders. In the center of the room, near the fireplace, sat a beautiful, hand-carved chess set made of ivory and obsidian. Noah's eyes lit up. He climbed onto the oversized leather chair and studied the board. It was set up in mid-game, white to move. He reached out a small hand and moved a bishop. "That's a bold move." Noah didn't jump. He just turned his head. Dominic was standing in the shadows of the stacks, holding a glass of water. He couldn't sleep. The revelation that he had 4 sons kept replaying in his mind, like a fever dream. "It's the only move," Noah said calmly. "If white moves the knight, black takes the center in 3 turns. This forces a sacrifice." Dominic walked over, setting his glass down. He looked at the board. He had been playing this game against his beta Silas for a week. They were stuck. He looked at where the boy had placed the bishop. He traced the lines in his head. Check. Block. Take. Mate. Holy hell. The kid was right. It was a mate in 5. "You play?" Dominic asked, sitting in the chair opposite his son. "Mum taught me," Noah said. "She says chess is like life. The pawns do all the work, but the king gets all the credit. The sting of the insult was sharp, but Dominic took it. Your mother is a smart woman. She's a genius, Noah corrected. She speaks 4 languages. She does people's homework for money. She knows how to fix the plumbing. You just sit in a chair and tell people what to do. I do a bit more than that, Dominic said defensively. I run a kingdom. I protect thousands of wolves. You didn't protect us, Noah said. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Noah's face was blank, not angry, just stating a fact. Dominic leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Noah, I didn't know. If I had known. If you had known we were strong, you would have kept us, Noah said. That's what Mum said. You only like things that are strong. You threw Mum away because you thought she was broken. That means you don't love people. You just love what they can do for you. Dominic felt like he had been punched in the gut. The logic was brutal, childishly simple, and completely accurate. I made a mistake, Dominic whispered. The biggest mistake of my life. Can you fix it? Noah asked. I'm going to try. Good luck, Noah said. He reached out and knocked over the Black King with his index finger. But you should know. Caleb put a frog in your shoes. He found it in the garden. Dominic blinked. My shoes. The shiny black ones outside your door. At that moment, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of shouting. Get down! Put the vase down! Came the voice of Gordon, the head of security. You'll never take me alive! Screamed a voice that sounded suspiciously like Caleb. Noah sighed and hopped off the chair. Ethan and Caleb found the armory. I should probably go stop them before they accidentally declare war on Canada. Noah walked to the door, then paused. He looked back at Dominic. You're not as scary as they say, Noah said. You look sad. Then he was gone. Dominic sat alone in the library, looking at the toppled king on the chessboard. Sad? Yes. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt something else. He felt alive. He stood up. He had chaos in his hallway, a frog in his shoe, a mistress in the dungeon, and a mate who hated his guts sleeping down the hall. It was going to be a hell of a week. He marched toward the door. He had to go save his head of security from his 5-year-old son. The next morning, the sun rose over the obsidian Shadowpack lands, illuminating the frost on the grass. The castle was usually a place of rigid discipline. Wake up at 6 a.m., training at 6:30 a.m., breakfast at 8 a.m. Today the schedule was in shambles. Dominic sat at the head of the massive dining table. He was exhausted. He had spent half the night calming down Gordon, his head of security, who was still traumatized by the frog incident, and the other half reading parenting books he had frantically downloaded onto his tablet. On his right sat Tessa. She was dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, hair tied back, looking ready to bolt. She ate her toast with the precision of someone who expected the plate to be snatched away. On his left sat the chaos. I want the green juice, Caleb demanded, pointing at a pitcher of kale smoothie meant for Dominic. That's for the king, a servant whispered nervously. Give it to him, Dominic sighed, waving his hand. Caleb took a sip, gagged, and immediately spat it back into the pitcher. It tastes like grass and sadness. It's healthy, Dominic said. It's poison, Caleb declared. You're trying to poison us. Mum, he's trying to poison us. Eat your eggs, Caleb, Tessa said without looking up, and stop accusing the king of assassination attempts before 9 a.m. Dominic looked at her. You're really leaving today? Packed and ready, Tessa said. As soon as breakfast is done, we're gone. The boys have school on Monday. Kindergarten. They are Ultimas, Dominic argued. They don't need to learn their ABCs. They need to learn how to control their aura so they don't accidentally blow up a building. I taught them just fine, Tessa snapped. Did you? Dominic raised an eyebrow. Is that why Ethan is currently bending his spoon into a pretzel? Tessa looked over. Ethan was indeed staring intensely at his spoon, which was curling into a metal knot solely through the pressure of his grip. He's anxious, Tessa defended. He needs to burn off energy, Dominic said. Let them come down to the training grounds, just for an hour, while you finalize your packing. Please. Tessa hesitated. She knew her sons. They were like nuclear reactors. If they didn't vent energy, they melted down. A run or a fight would do them good. Fine, she relented. 1 hour. But if anyone touches a hair on their heads, I will skin them. The Royal Training Grounds were a massive dirt arena, surrounded by high stone walls. 50 of the pack's elite recruits, wolves between the ages of 16 and 20, were running drills. They were shirtless, sweating, and growling as they sparred. General Titus, the combat instructor, blew his whistle. Harder. You fight like pups. The Rogue King won't ask for a timeout. Dominic walked onto the field, followed by the 4 5-year-olds. The training stopped. 50 pairs of eyes stared at the small boys in their miniature tracksuits. General, Dominic called out, I have some new recruits for the morning session. General Titus, a man with a neck thicker than a tree trunk, looked down at the boys and laughed. With all due respect, Alpha, is this Bring Your Child to Work Day? It's dangerous down here. I'm not scared of you, Ethan said. He stepped forward, cracking his neck. It was a disturbing sound coming from a child. Titus smirked. Oh yeah? You tough little man? He knelt down. Go play in the sandbox, kiddo. Ethan looked at Dominic. Can I? Dominic crossed his arms. Light contact only. No breaking bones. Fine. Ethan sighed, disappointed. All right, little guy, Titus said, standing up and tossing a padded blocking pad to a lanky recruit named Jax. Jax, hold the pad. Let the kid punch it. Don't cry if he hits you too hard. The recruits laughed. Jax grinned, holding the thick foam pad down at waist height. Come on, Tiger. Give me your best shot. Ethan didn't wind up. He didn't run. He just planted his feet, twisted his hips, and threw a right hook. Crack. It sounded like a gunshot. Jax didn't just stumble. He was launched backward. He flew 5 feet through the air and landed flat on his back in the mud, wheezing, the foam pad indented with a perfect, small fist print. The laughter died instantly. Ethan shook out his hand. Your stance is weak, he told the groaning recruit. You lean too much on your heels. General Titus's jaw dropped. He looked at Dominic. Alpha. What? Next, Liam said, stepping up beside his brother. I want to try the obstacle course. Your record is 2 minutes, right? I can do it in 1. For the next 45 minutes, the Obsidian Shadow Pack witnessed the impossible. They watched Noah dismantle the pack's strategy instructor in a simulated war game, pointing out 3 flaws in the perimeter defense within 5 minutes. They watched Caleb outrun the fastest scout in a game of tag, laughing maniacally the entire time. They watched Liam use his alpha voice to make a snarling, uncooperative wolf sit and roll over against his will. By the time the hour was up, the recruits weren't laughing. They were looking at the quadruplets with a mixture of terror and reverence. Tessa appeared at the edge of the field, her bag over her shoulder. Time's up. Boys, let's go. Oh, Mom, Caleb whined, dropping the recruit he had in a headlock. I was winning. Now, Tessa commanded. The boys trudged over, sweaty and dirty, but looking happier than they had in years. Dominic felt a pang of desperation. He couldn't let them leave. Not now. He had just seen the future of his kingdom, and it was magnificent. Tessa, wait, Dominic said, jogging to catch up to her. No, Dominic, she said, walking toward the parking lot where her beat-up sedan was parked among the luxury SUVs. We had the deal. 1 night, 1 training session. Now we go back to our life. You can't go back to a rental in Seattle, Dominic argued. It's not safe. Everyone saw them last night. The rumors are already spreading. Rogues, rival packs, kidnappers. They'll all be coming for them. 4 Ultimas? They are a walking target. I've protected them for 5 years, Tessa said fiercely, unlocking her car. I can protect them now. Not against a battalion, Dominic said. He stepped in front of the car door. Tessa, I can't let you leave. Are you kidnapping us? Her eyes flashed gold. No, Dominic said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a scroll. I'm enforcing the law. Tessa stiffened. What law? The Decree of Royal Succession, Section 4, Paragraph 2, Dominic cited. Any confirmed heir to the throne found to be under the age of 18 must remain within the royal sanctuary for a probationary period of 30 days to ensure their health, safety, and integration. Tessa snatched the scroll. She read it, her hands shaking with rage. It was there, in black and white. You dug up a law from 1800 just to trap me? She hissed. I dug it up to keep them alive, Dominic said, his voice dropping. Tessa, please, look at the perimeter. My scouts reported 3 unidentified drones hovering over the estate this morning. Someone already knows they are here. If you drive out of these gates, you won't make it to the highway. Tessa looked at the boys, who were piling into the back seat, arguing about who was the strongest. She looked at the sky. She looked at the massive stone walls of the castle. She hated him. She hated him for rejecting her, and she hated him for being right. 30 days, Tessa spat, but we stay in the guest house, not the main castle, and you stay away from me. Deal, Dominic exhaled, relief washing over him. And Dominic? She added, her hand on the door handle. Yes? If this is a trick, she whispered, I will burn this kingdom down around your ears. While the boys were humiliating the army, a different kind of war was brewing in the East Wing. The East Wing was a polite name for the high-security holding cells. Bianca Sterling sat on a velvet chair. She had demanded furniture, screaming at the guard through the reinforced glass. Do you know who I am? She shrieked. I am the future queen. When I get out of here, I will have you turned into a rug. The guard didn't even blink. The heavy door at the end of the hall buzzed open. A man walked in. He was older, with silver hair slicked back, and a suit that cost more than the average house. He walked with a cane, not because he needed it, but because it contained a hidden silver blade. Silas Sterling, the pack beta, and Bianca's father. Daddy! Bianca wailed, running to the glass. Get me out of here. Dominic has lost his mind. He brought that bitch and her mongrels into the house. Silas signaled the guard to leave. The guard hesitated, then obeyed. Silas was the second most powerful man in the kingdom. Stop crying, Bianca, Silas said, his voice smooth and cold like oil. It's unbecoming. He cancelled the engagement, Bianca sobbed. He knows about Dr. Aris. He knows I faked the charts. I know, Silas said. Dr. Aris was a weak link. He has been dealt with. He had a tragic car accident on the way out of the territory an hour ago. Bianca stopped crying. She stared at her father. He's dead? Loose ends are dangerous, Silas said. But we have a bigger problem, the quadruplets. They're monsters, Bianca spat. Did you see their eyes? They are Ultimas, Daddy. If they grow up, Dominic's line is secured for 100 years. I will never be queen. My child... She touched her stomach. My child will be nothing. A bastard half-sibling living in their shadow. Precisely, Silas said. He tapped his cane on the floor. Dominic is blinded by sentimentality. He thinks he has found a miracle. But miracles are fragile. What are you going to do? The decree of succession keeps them here for 30 days, Silas mused. That is 30 days where accidents can happen. Stairs are slippery, Food can be spoiled. The woods are full of wild beasts. Dominic guards them like a hawk, Bianca said. Dominic is one man, Silas smiled, a cruel twisting of lips. I control the roster. I control the supply chain. And tonight, the perimeter alarm system is due for a maintenance reset. You're going to let rogues in? Bianca gasped. Not just rogues, Silas whispered. I have a contact in the northern wastelands, a pack of ferals, mindless, bloodthirsty beasts who don't care about titles or treaties. They only care about meat. Tonight? Tonight, Silas confirmed, during the stormy weather. By tomorrow morning, the king will be grieving the tragic loss of his newfound heirs, and you, my dear, will be there to comfort him. The storm hit at midnight. Thunder shook the guest house, a charming but isolated villa located about a quarter-mile from the main castle. Tessa was awake. She couldn't sleep. The instinct that had kept her and the boys alive for 5 years was screaming at her. Danger, danger. She checked the windows, locked. She checked the boys. They were piled into one massive bed, a tangle of limbs and soft snoring. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died. Total darkness. Tessa froze. The castle grid never went down. It had backup generators. Then she smelled it. Rot. Old blood. Wet fur. Ferals. She didn't scream. She moved. She grabbed the silver dagger she kept under her pillow, a habit from living in the city slums, and shook Liam awake. Liam, she whispered urgently. Wake your brothers. Now. Quietly. Liam opened his eyes. They were glowing in the dark. Bad dogs? He asked. Very bad dogs, Tessa said. Get in the bathroom, lock the door. Do not open it unless you hear my voice or Dominic's. But we can fight, Ethan whispered, waking up instantly ready for violence. Not these, Tessa hissed. These are killers. Go. She shoved them into the master bathroom and locked the heavy door. She turned back to the bedroom just as the window shattered. A massive wolf, covered in mange and scars, crashed into the room. It was twice the size of a normal wolf, its eyes rolling in madness, foam dripping from its jaws. A feral. It snarled, spotting Tessa. Tessa shifted. Her wolf was smaller, a sleek, russet-coloured female, but she was fast. The feral lunged. Tessa ducked, slashing with her claws, but the feral was numb to pain. It backhanded her, sending her crashing into the dresser. Pain exploded in her ribs. 2 more ferals climbed through the window. Tessa snarled, backing up against the bathroom door. She would die before she let them through. Suddenly the bedroom door exploded inward. Dominic was there. He was in his human form, but he was terrifying. He held a broadsword, an ancient, silver weapon, and his eyes were burning violet, the sign of the Alpha King. Get away from her! Dominic roared. He didn't wait. He decapitated the first feral in one stroke. He spun, driving the sword into the chest of the second. But there were more. They were pouring in through the windows, swarming the villa. It was an extermination squad. Tessa, get behind me, Dominic shouted, parrying a snap from a massive grey wolf. There's too many, Tessa yelled, throwing a lamp at a wolf that was trying to flank him. Dominic was a warrior king, but he was fighting in a confined space, protecting Tessa, and outnumbered 12-1. A feral latched onto his arm, sinking its teeth in. Dominic grunted, shaking it off, but another bit his leg. They were being overwhelmed. One of the ferals, a huge black beast, ignored Dominic and threw itself at the bathroom door. It began tearing at the wood. No! Tessa screamed, lunging forward. Crack! The bathroom door didn't break from the outside. It blew open from the inside. The feral at the door was blasted backward by a shockwave of pure force. It hit the far wall and didn't move. Standing in the doorway were the 4 boys, but they didn't look like children anymore. Their eyes were glowing with a blinding white light. The air in the room became heavy. pressing down with the weight of a collapsing star. The Ultima Command. Liam stepped forward. He looked at the pack of ferals surrounding his bleeding father and terrified mother. He opened his mouth. His voice wasn't a child's voice. It was the voice of a god. Kneel. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a rewrite of reality. Every single feral in the room slammed into the floor. Their bones cracked audibly as the gravity of the command forced them down. They whined, their madness temporarily overridden by the absolute terror of a superior predator. Dominic fell to one knee, using his sword to hold himself up, gasping for air. He looked at his sons. They were holding the command, but their noses were starting to bleed. It was too much power for their small bodies. "Liam, stop!" Tessa cried, rushing to them. "You'll hurt yourselves!" "Kill them!" Ethan gritted out, his eyes flickering. "No!" Dominic shouted. "I'll do it! Release them!" Liam let out a breath, and the pressure vanished. Before the ferals could recover, Dominic moved. It was a blur of steel and violence. Within 10 seconds, every feral in the room was dead. Silence fell, broken only by the heavy breathing of the adults and the rain pouring in through the shattered window. Dominic dropped his sword. He looked at Tessa, checking her for wounds. Then he looked at the boys, who were wiping their bloody noses, looking exhausted. He rushed over, scooping all 4 of them into a massive hug. He buried his face in their necks, shaking. "I've got you," he whispered fiercely. "I've got you." Tessa watched them. She saw the blood on Dominic's arm, the way he placed his body between the boys and the carnage. "Someone let them in," Tessa said, her voice trembling with cold rage. "The alarms didn't go off." Dominic looked up. His violet eyes were gone, replaced by pitch-black voids of murder. "I know," Dominic said, "and I know exactly who has the clearance to do it." He stood up. "Pack your things," Dominic commanded. "We are moving to the Royal Keep. Tonight. You sleep in my room." "Dominic!" "No arguments," he roared, then softened instantly. "Please, I can't protect you out here. Someone tried to kill my children. The game is over." Tessa nodded. She reached out and took his bloody hand. "Let's go," she said. And then, we hunt. The sun had barely breached the horizon when the doors to the High Council chamber were kicked open. Dominic didn't walk in. He stormed in, his clothes still stained with the black blood of the ferals. Behind him walked Tessa, her head held high, looking every inch the queen she was meant to be. And flanking them were the 4 boys, no longer hidden, no longer secret. Silas Sterling sat at the head of the council table, sipping coffee. He looked up, his composure slipping for a fraction of a second when he saw Dominic alive. "My king!" Silas stood, feigning relief. "We heard reports of an attack. I was just mobilizing the guard." "Save it!" Dominic growled. He threw a heavy sack onto the mahogany table. It landed with a wet thud. It rolled open, revealing the severed head of the feral alpha. Around the neck was a collar. Stamped into the leather was a tracking number. "Sterling Imports." The council members gasped. "You let them in," Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. "You shut down the grid. You tried to murder my sons." "Absurd," Bianca shrieked from the corner, clutching her belly. "My father is a patriot. This is a setup by her." She pointed a trembling finger at Tessa. "Is it?" Tessa stepped forward. She looked at Bianca with pity, not anger. "You never were very good at lying, Bianca." "I am carrying the royal heir," Bianca screamed. "You can't touch us." "You're carrying a lie," Noah spoke up. The 5-year-old walked to the table, holding a stack of papers. He tossed them down. "I hacked your cloud account, Lady Bianca. Your password was Future Queen 123. Weak." Noah pointed to the papers. Emails to a clinic in Switzerland. Invoices for a prosthetic belly. And a fertility report from a month ago, stating you are unable to conceive. The room went deathly silent. Bianca's hands flew to her stomach, which suddenly looked very stiff. Dominic walked over to her. He didn't yell. He simply reached out and tugged at the fabric of her dress. The padding shifted. "A fake," Dominic whispered, his heart breaking for the years of deception he had endured. "It was all a power grab." "Take them away," Dominic commanded. Silas snarled, shifting into his wolf form to attack, but he didn't make it 2 steps. "Sit!" All 4 boys spoke at once. The Ultima command hit Silas like a freight train. The powerful beta was forced to the floor, whining, pinned by the sheer gravitational force of 4 royal children. "You are relieved of your duty," Liam said coldly. As the guards dragged the screaming Sterlings away, Dominic turned to the council. He took the crown off his own head. "I failed to see the snakes in my own grass," Dominic announced. "I failed my mate. I failed my sons." He looked at Tessa. "I am not fit to rule alone." He walked to Tessa, dropping to one knee in front of the entire court. "Tessa Hart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I rejected you because I was a fool who thought power came from a bloodline. I see now that power comes from the heart. You raised 4 kings while I played at being one. Will you take this crown? Will you rule by my side? Not as my property, but as my equal." Tessa looked down at him. She looked at her sons, who were grinning at her. She looked at the kingdom that needed healing. "I won't just rule, Dominic," she smiled, taking the heavy gold band. "I'll lead." She placed the crown back on his head, then leaned down and kissed him. The bond, dormant for 5 years, roared back to life, golden and unbreakable. "But," she whispered against his lips, "you're changing all the diapers if we have another one." Dominic laughed, pulling her and the boys into an embrace. "Deal." And that is the story of how a rejected, barren waitress brought a kingdom to its knees. Dominic learned the hard way that you never underestimate a mother, and certainly never underestimate the heart bloodline. Whatever happened to Silas and Bianca? Well, let's just say the northern prison cells are very cold this time of year. As for the boys,